I used to have a hobby of collecting and testing radar detectors. I had 5 detectors, a laser jammer, and 2 radar guns at one point. The whole collection cost me over $1,000. I spent a lot of time looking for good deals on Craigslist. I found a model that usually cost around $350, but it was being sold for $60, so I quickly took advantage of the offer. I called the seller, arranged a time to meet at their house, and went there. The neighborhood was in the middle of St. Paul, Minnesota. I grew up in a safe suburb, so I wasn't very experienced with different areas. I reached the address, and the lights in the house were off. When I called the phone number, it connected to a completely different person than the one I had talked to before. They told me to go to the back of the property and knock on the door at the bottom of the stairs. So I went around to the back and I reached the door. It was a door that led to a basement apartment, so there was only one way in and out. There I was, standing in front of this door with a dim and flickering light bulb. I knocked on the door, and I could hear a big dog starting to bark, but not much else. No one came to the door, so I knocked again. After a while, a very small and thin woman opened the door and invited me in. I felt a bit unsure about going inside, but I thought if I wanted to get that device, I had to go in. I sat in her not-so-clean living room and kitchen while she searched through her bag to find the detector. She's pulling out digital cameras, cell phones, all sorts of random electronics while trying to sell me each of those also at the same time. With each device she took out, she had a story about where she got it. One was from her cousin, another from a kid, and some from neighbors, and so on. She finally finds what we're looking for and tells me the price, which was $15 higher than we had agreed before I came. Luckily, I had the sense not to bring more money than I needed, but she really wanted the full price. So she offered to drive me to a gas station so I could get the extra money to cover the difference. I thought to myself, I've already come this far, and she seemed like a poor and skinny lady in a not-so-nice neighborhood, so I figured why not? So I agreed and let her drive me to the gas station to get the extra money. We arrived at a Super America where there were a lot of people who looked like they might be in a gang. They were being very loud, and the cashier was shouting back at them from behind thick glass, telling them it was time to close and they had to leave. In my hometown, all the Super Americas were open 24/7, and there was no glass barrier between customers and cashiers. Finally, I got the money and got back in her car. I was thinking, great, now I can go back and get what I came for. But she had other plans. We drove to a liquor store a few blocks away, and she went inside to buy a bottle of something. Then we drove off again. We stopped at someone else's house, and she left me waiting in the car for about 10 minutes. After waiting in the car for 10 minutes, she came running out and got back in the car. Then we started driving again. Finally, about an hour later, we got back to her apartment. She gave me the detector. I got into my car, tried the detector to make sure it worked, said thanks to her, and then left. It wasn't until I was halfway home that I realized how sketchy and unsafe the situation had been. I could have been robbed more than once that night. The scariest part was that I hadn't told anyone where I was going, so if something had happened to me, nobody would have known where to find me. I learned a valuable lesson about being more cautious and letting someone know about my plans. Collecting radar detectors was a hobby, but my safety should always come first. From then on, I made sure to take smarter steps and share my whereabouts with a friend or family member. We were in the process of moving to a new house, so I had to sell a push bike for my parents because we needed to clear out the garage and the shed as part of the moving process. It turned out to be quite a stressful day, as our goal was to finish all the clearing within a week, and one entire day was dedicated to sorting out the garage. Most of the items we decided to give away to my younger cousins since they could use them. However, there was one push bike that was too big for them, and they weren't interested in it anyway, so I thought of listing it on Craigslist, expecting quick responses due to the very low price we set for it, as we simply wanted to get rid of it. I think we listed it for something like $30 or $40, an incredibly low price. In the end, just like we expected, we received many replies. There was this one guy who said he would come and pick up in next 10 minutes. So I gave him our address and eventually he showed up. The first thing he wanted to do was inspect the bike, and that seemed fine. It's important to note that during this time, my parents were still cleaning out the garage, so they knew this guy had arrived and walked in. I'm not sure where he came from, but he probably lived close by. Maybe he walked over, or someone dropped him off, or he took the bus. I don't think he used an Uber because if you're getting an Uber, wouldn't it be easier to be dropped off right where you need to go? While we had the garage open, we were on the lookout for this guy, eagerly waiting for him to arrive. I had to take the bike out to the front so he could check it out. Finally, he walks up and we say hello to each other. The guy is maybe around 5 feet 8 inches tall. He's wearing a tank top and has long hair that's kind of like dreadlocks. So he gives off these hippie vibes, but he also gives me vibes like someone who's into smoking weed, so I'm not sure what to think about this guy. At the same time, I start wondering why someone like him would want a bike that costs just $40, as this bike was probably meant for people who are around 15 to 20 years old. My cousins, on the other hand, are only 8 and 9 years old, so they're way too short to ride this bike. It might take them 5 to 6 years to grow enough to actually fit on the seat. We thought it was silly to give the bike to my cousins along with all the other things we were giving them. Selling it seemed like the better option to just get rid of it, so the guy was there. He was strange, but we wanted it gone. While my parents were busy trying to finish cleaning out the rest of the garage, I was just standing there with him, watching him examine the bike. He gave it a thorough look, checking out the chain, the spokes, and all the different parts of the bike. He seemed really puzzled and was giving me a strange look. I wasn't sure what to think. Then he went into my garage and started looking around, and that's when I got a bit confused. I asked him, "What are you doing?" My dad stopped right away and looked at him. I glanced at my dad thinking, "What's happening? Should we be concerned?" Then this guy turns around and says, "Do you have any Allen keys or bolts?" Turns out, he wanted to adjust the seat to give the bike a try. It was kind of strange, but I told him, "Sure, if you're testing it, I need the money in my hand first." When he said that, I immediately felt uneasy and had a feeling he might try to ride away with it. Eventually, my dad went to get the toolbox and brought out the bolts and Allen keys he needed to raise the seat. I knew this guy was probably around average height or a bit shorter, maybe 5 feet 8 inches, but I didn't really think he was going to ride off with the bike. The bike was really meant for teenagers. It was purple, and I'm pretty sure he would have needed to adjust it to the highest level just to fit and not hurt his knees while riding. My dad handed me the toolbox, and I picked out what I thought was the right size nut. Turned out it was the wrong one, and the guy took over. He seemed to know a lot about this stuff, but I wasn't really sure what I was doing. My doubts eased a bit as we kept chatting about the day. He started talking about his job at Taco Bell and other things. But all the while, I was still quite suspicious and trying really hard to understand why this guy was really there. By the end of the day, you couldn't really sell this bike easily. It was all rusty and about 10 years old. Sure, it was meant more for kids, and this guy might have been able to use it, but was he really in such a tough spot that he needed this bike? Well, he did walk here, so I guessed maybe. I just kind of went along with it. Still, I was ready to get this guy off my property right away, even if I had to do it physically because he just didn't feel right. While he was busy adjusting the seat, my mom and dad would occasionally look over, getting weird feelings too. I kept glancing at my dad, thinking that at any moment, we might have to wrestle this guy down. Finally, he started messing with the seat and tried sitting on it, so I told him to hold on and asked for the money first. But he doesn't pay attention to me and just keeps nodding, saying he's trying out how the seat feels. He doesn't right away, but things get really uncomfortable. At that point, my dad stops what he's doing, puts down a box, and steps over to block his way out. I put both my hands on the handlebars to make sure he can't steer or try to ride off. He doesn't seem interested in paying or actually buying the bike at all. After sitting on the bike for about a minute or two, he looks at me and says, "Nah, this isn't for me, bro." Then he gets off the bike and starts walking away. I have no clue what this guy was trying to pull, but I strongly felt like he might have stolen it if he had the chance. Both my dad and I are pretty big guys, and we don't put up with nonsense. This guy probably thought that he could make us chase after him, even if he found a clear path to ride off. My old girlfriend sold her iPhone on Craigslist once as she needed quick money to pay her remaining rent. I didn't live with her then. I still lived with my parents. She had a tough relationship with her own parents, so she left home when she was 17. My parents didn't allow her to stay with us all the time, but she often stayed over on weekends. One evening, she tried to sell her phone on Craigslist. I don't remember if it was the iPhone 10 or 11, but it was a few years back. She put it up for sale and wanted around $500 or $600 for it. When she advertised it for sale, many people were interested. They came to her place to see the phone before buying. On Craigslist and in the phone market, there were fake phones being sold, but it was obvious hers was real. Anyone who knew a bit about phones could tell it was genuine. Finally, a serious buyer showed up. They went to her apartment when I wasn't there. She told me the buyer was a young person, only 13 years old. This young buyer agreed to pay $400 in cash. She took the money and agreed to the deal, thinking it was a good offer. She showed me the cash the next day, trying to impress me. I understood something was wrong. I looked closely and asked her to give me the money. She thought I was joking, but I said seriously, "No, give me the money. Something's not right." When I checked the money, I saw it was fake. It wasn't real money. She got really scared and had a huge "oh my God" look on her face in front of me. She started crying and screaming, saying, "A kid tricked me." And yes, that's what happened. There was nothing we could do. We didn't know who this person was, and they deleted their account and blocked us. Maybe they did this to others too, but she shouldn't have fallen for obviously fake money. The money didn't even look real. Now let's move on to the next part of this story. I took the money from her and ended up bringing it home. Eventually, I put it in the side compartment of my car door. I ended up forgetting it's even there. Fast forward a few months to winter, I was driving down the highway when one of my brake lights went out. I got pulled over by a sheriff who then asked to search my car because, as he said, he smelled something. I knew these were just his usual tactics, but at the time, I probably didn't help myself. I was arguing with him a lot and talking back because I hadn't had a very good night. Also, this happened quite a while after I had broken up with my girlfriend. I hadn't seen her for at least a month by then. The police officer told me to get out of the car. I did because he seemed angry. He yelled at me through the window and ordered me around. I didn't want to show my ID, but I had a broken light on my car, so I thought it's better not to argue. So when I got out of the car, he started searching it. Then, another police car arrived and parked nicely behind the first one. It was like he had called for backup because just as I was arguing with the first officer, the second officer was getting out of the new car. Suddenly, the officer searching my car found the fake money hidden in the side pocket of the car door. That's when I realized I messed up. The fake money, the $400 that wasn't real, was still in my car and I hadn't gotten rid of it. I completely forgot about it because I never used the storage spaces in my car. My car was pretty clean and didn't have any trash because I didn't bring things into the car. I didn't eat or drink in the car. I didn't do anything like that. So I just forgot the money was there. This was a dumb mistake on my part because they arrested me right away because of it. They took me to the police station and tried to make up all sorts of stories, saying I was part of a gang dealing with fake money and fraudulent cash and things like that. In the end, I found myself in a tricky situation. The whole experience made me realize how things can go wrong even when you least expect it. My ex-girlfriend's encounter with fake money came back to haunt me, leading to a series of events that I never saw coming. It served as a reminder that sometimes even small mistakes can have big consequences.